Check it out. Failure. I know that I have been saying no such thing as failure, framing our minds around winning and how, losses don't exist, they're only lessons. All very true. However, when implementing action, taking steps, we need to be realistic. We need to know that not everything will go our way. So if you want to say that that's a loss, you can. If you score less points than the other team, that technically counts as a loss. So we're not going to be foolish and say, there's no such thing. However, framing our minds, it's important to have that positive aspect and not necessarily, look upon the losses as losses, but as lessons. And so the difference here that we're going to start with respect for failure in this portion of the Sober to Super program is that we're going to look at it realistically and from the action oriented perspective. This is real life. When I was working towards bettering my life and I was shooting for better employment opportunities, and as I gained some clarity and I gained some traction in my life after sobriety, I was, presented different employment opportunities. One of them, which was selling roofs, right? I don't know if you're familiar with how this roof sales thing has been going in Florida. It's been an absolute catastrophe. I think, my personal opinion, once upon a time, there was roofs that were covered by insurance. These roof salesmen figured out, like, not necessarily a loophole, but a way to manipulate the system and get roofs paid for by insurance companies. Long story longer, these insurance companies kind of went under as a result of all of these like tenacious roof salesmen out there, on the grind, hitting pavement and selling roofs to people. And so I got involved, and so I was told, or it was presented to me like, oh, hey, listen, there's this opportunity. It's a real easy way to make $100K a year. I'm thinking, damn, like at the point in time when I was being told about this opportunity, I was making like $17K a year. I'm thinking, well, damn, that sounds amazing. Like, let's do it. I got on board with a company that was full of these roof salesmen, and I looked to my left and right, and it looked as if these guys were doing exactly what they were saying they were doing. They were making six figures. They were, out there earning this income. And an important note, a little foreshadowing here, I was almost entirely motivated by this figure, six figures figure. And so I'm thinking, well, that amount of money would, make a huge difference in my journey. So here I am. What I figured out quickly is that how you get it done in this industry is going door to door. Now, door-to-door sales it's no secret. It's tough. And I think that if you were to pay attention or actually look for a lot of really successful people, Brown, motivational speaker, he started door-to-door with TVs back in the 80s. You have, Rory Vaden, he did door-to-door sales of like encyclopedias, these old school guys or women too. If you had enough guts, if you had enough balls to go marching around neighborhoods, banging on people's personal space, like, hey, guess what? I just showed up uninvited. I'm gonna inconvenience you and try to make some money. It's like, damn. Like, when I think about somebody knocking on my door, the levels of how annoyed I am, brings me to thoughts of violence. It's like, who the hell are you, and why are you interrupting me? And getting, it's too close, you're too close, man. And so here I am. I am motivated almost entirely by this financial motivation, and so I got involved and realized quickly the name of the game. it's reps, it's action, it's knocking on doors. And so there is, simple math involved. If you knock on 100 doors and you get two people to agree to get on board with you, that's two sales. This is what it is. This is what it was. And so if you're willing to take the no's and the rejection, then you can do well. You can make that amount of money. That's a real thing. But like most endeavors, people can't handle the failure. They can't handle the rejection. And so this is why, looking back, a lot of successful people speak fondly of the experience, is because whether or not you're successful, and by the way, I was not successful. I was kicked to the curb. I wasn't fired. I left, but I wasn't making any money either. So, objectively, you could look at the entire experience as a loss. I don't like to say that, and you can see by this smile on my face, I look fondly at this period of time now. At the time, it was like, man, get me the hell out of here. I can't take it anymore. All these people, they hate me. People are trying to call the cops on me. I'm ready to throw in the towel like super early now. And I still manage to cherish this moment in my journey. And so even if you don't succeed with the door-to-door thing, the important part to note is the embracing of the rejection. It is built into this particular kind of work that I got to experience. It's like rejection is there. It's going to happen. No way to avoid it. And that's the only real barrier to getting it done and making the money. I couldn't cut it. What can happen as a result of being able to take the hits, take the failure, take the rejection, is you can forego mediocrity. So we're going to look at this phrase here: forego mediocrity by embracing failure. Simple. I just said it a couple different ways. I'll say it again this way: forego mediocrity by embracing failure. If you can knowingly go at something with the knowledge that you're going to fail, the challenges will come at you, you will take the hits, and you still proceed anyway, mediocrity can be a thing of the past. And this is what we want. We want to forego mediocrity. We want to leave it behind. We want another level, right? You wouldn't have joined this program unless you wanted a superior quality of life than what you're getting. And now mediocrity is mediocrity. Realistically, you're all right. And if you join this program as a result of being an addict or an alcoholic, you know what it's like to not be all right. So sometimes being all right is like, man, it beats the hell out of where I was. And so there's some glory in that, but there's even more if you're willing to go at failure and rejection wholeheartedly with commitment. Another important takeaway that it's like an asterisk to foregoing mediocrity and embracing failure and getting familiar with it is failure is never a person. And I think this is a pitfall for a lot of people who've suffered from some substance abuse and things of that nature, is that it starts to become their identity. And we must understand that failure is just it's a period of time in our life. It's a circumstance. It is an experience, and it will be gone before too long. With the door-to-door situation, it was not long-lived if I didn't let it be that way. Meaning, if I knock on a door and they tell me to fuck off, it lasts 5 seconds and I'm on to the next one. I'm knocking on the next door. Here's the trick. It's easier said than done. Most of the time, those rejections, they have a weight to it. If we are looking at this journey that I've been expressing and kind of sharing, before the struggles were physical. I'd go to work, I'm digging holes, I'm miserable physically, right? Physically, I'm miserable. This is a different kind. I mean, it's still pretty damn hot, but the rejection is a weight that I had to carry. And so again, the asterisk to this, to the phrase forego mediocrity by embracing failure, the asterisk is failure is never a person. It's just a period of time, and that period of time will end, right? And so this will aid in our implementation of our failure relationship. Controlled failure is an interesting aspect to the nature of failure as an action. Controlled failure, a good example of this is the gym. We willingly go to the gym to fail. We push ourselves to do something that we don't have to do. And if we expose ourselves to this failure, we understand that we get stronger or faster or we lose weight. There's some kind of a benefit, right? And so the gym is such a great illustration. I've worked in gyms, I go to gyms, I like gyms, but they make sense. And I'll tell you, this is the best way to understand it. Say if you don't like going to the gym, is that the scale is right in front of you. The controlled failure scale, you walk up to a weight bench and it's got dumbbells. And say the dumbbells start at 5 pounds, then 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and it goes up and it gets to 100. And so you literally can see the controlled failure in a scale presented to you in this environment. You walk up and you say to yourself, oh, okay, let me grab these 30s. And you go and you try to do some kind of an exercise. And you think, holy shit, that was way too hard. And you can't even do, you can't get past a few or a handful or whatever. And you're like, oh, but you're in this environment. You're in control. So it's real simple. You just grab a lighter weight. You grab the 20. And now all of a sudden you can do the movement. And so the art, there is an art, and we're going to get into this. There's another extension after the controlled failure, but I want to get into the environment and how we put ourselves in there, into the controlled environment. You get in there and you push yourself to failure until it's no longer failure, and you can do it. It's such a beautiful thing. Now, I want to kind of touch on like maybe another example that is not the gym. So in case it's a hard, say you don't like the gym. So consider somebody who's terrified of elevators. They have a fear. I think there's a name for it. I just don't know the name. So they have this fear. You can go for any kind of fear. You are able to think to yourself, okay, I'm going to control the failure. I'm not going to get in the elevator because I'll break down in tears and I'll be screaming and I'll have nightmares for a week. I can't make it that far, but I can approach an elevator. I know that there's one at the end of the hall. I will get as close as I can to where the anxiety is starting to become unbearable. And then I'll back away and I'll leave. And so you've kind of exposed yourself in an environment that you are controlling because, nobody's making you get in or anything like that. So you can, approach, feel the anxiety, feel the failure on its way, but you're not quite there and you turn around and you leave. And so by embracing failure in increments in a controlled environment, so powerful. And when done willfully, and given the blessing that you have the environment to control that, or to manipulate it, then that's substantial in getting us to where we want to be. In conjunction with controlled failure in these environments is progressive overload. As I have just mentioned about the elevator, like you go as close as you can to where you can bear it, and then you leave. You turn around and walk where you go home. And the next day you go closer. That's the progressive overload. You're now increasing your exposure, and therefore it's progressive overload. To use the example of weights, you can pick up the 30s, and you are able to do 2 or 3 or 5 repetitions of a particular movement. And then when you revisit that movement, you increase the weight. You are increasing your strength. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can increase the overload, progressively overload. It just really means increase the difficulty. It's another way to say it. if were to think back to that example that I had started with in this program about the 3 minutes of jumping jacks, that's where I started, and it was harder. And so then I increased the amount of time that I was doing this particular exercise, and I increased further and further. And there's different ways that you can do it. Now, with that particular one, I started off doing like 30 seconds of jumping jacks with a 1 minute break, and then I turned it to a 1-to-1 ratio where it was like 1 minute of jumping jacks, 1 minute break, and then it was 1 minute of jumping jacks, 30-second break. And so that ratio, I'm kind of getting into the technicality of that particular progressive overload, but the ratio, you can go from like, 1 to 2 for your work to rest ratios. Then you go 1-to-1 even work to rest ratios, and then you go 2-to-1 work to rest ratios. I'm getting a little technical here, forgive me. But I want you to remember this part. What I just went over is one tactic, but it's really an art form to progressively overload yourself in order to achieve your endeavor. Now, everything that I've just said in the last like 2 minutes seems really complicated. It can be as simple as just pushing yourself a little further every day. To get to the simplicity of anything, or this particular idea, is that you just push yourself a little bit harder. Now, you don't push yourself to break, and you have to be able to manage some load. For instance, here's a good example. If you were to go to the same gym and you were to look over and you see another individual and they've got 300 pounds on the bench press or squat rack, whatever, you think, okay, I can see them doing it. I'm going to do that. And so you start getting all these weights and you pile them all on and you think, all right, here I go. I'm going to do what they did. And then you don't do shit. You can't even move it. You can't even lift it at all. And then there's no action, right? If there's no action, nothing happens. And this is tying together so many elements of this program. It goes all the way back to our goal, choice, right? In this particular example, if you choose to do what that person does, that you see it being done by them and you say, I'm going to lift 300 pounds, but you're nowhere near that. You've chosen the wrong goal. You went too big. Now, you gave it a shot. There wasn't much anxiety, and so you gave it a shot, but you didn't do a damn thing because your goal was too large and it wasn't realistic to where you were at. So that ties in that element of this program. But moving further into this art form of progressive overload is that to get the benefit of the progressive overload, you still have to be able to make some moves. You still have to be able to take some actions. So it's more appropriate to choose a lower weight that makes more sense to you. And then therefore you can perform. And if you can perform, you can grow, right? And so as you can see in this little depiction here, it's kind of a crude little chart with increasing numbers there. But really, at the end of the day, this is really all about just increasing the difficulty over time. We're going to talk about momentum again and how that ties in with our relationship with failure, wins, losses, meaning lessons. So the momentum in the application of this program, my desire and what will be your desire is to grow exponentially. Well, what does exponentially mean? As you can see in this depiction here, you see that curve. That curve goes up and to the right, and it starts to, it's a curve. It's not linear. The ratio or the relationship between your success and effort and all of that is not a one-to-one. It's not a straight line. It actually grows larger as you gain this experience and you get all of these iterations in the wins and the progress. It grows faster and faster. And so, just to get a little nerdy here, the exponent of a function, which I have here, this is just a very crude function, and sorry to bring you back to college algebra, but here, that tiny x, right, that is an exponent. And there's a lot of power here, and it both being like a part of an equation depicted here. But when I say grow exponentially, there's a power and a force, and that power and force is momentum. And if used correctly, it is our friend, it is our ally. Momentum can also bring you down the wrong path, and I think that we've experienced that. Maybe if substance abuse has taken its toll on you, it probably got worse at an increasing rate, right? So your life began to like fall apart, and then it just seemed to just pile up on you almost like that. And it's the same principle. Speaking of principles, we're going to get into the Matthew principle, not before a little more math for you here, just to kind of maybe cause some pain for people that don't like math. Here we have some simple equations to kind of pour some gasoline on that exponential fire. And so what we have is 2 to the second power, right? And 2 to the third power, 2 to the fourth power. Now, 2 to the second power is 2 times 2 equals 4. I think most people kind of know that, right? 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. 2 to the fourth power, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 equals 16. Now, why am I dragging you through this this mathematical journey here? It's to show you that when that you change that little tiny number, right? That tiny number on top of another number, the result is massive, right? So this works both mathematically, what you're seeing there, but it also works linguistically when we say exponential growth, and it works realistically when we apply this idea to ourselves. Here we are where the larger 2, that tiny number, the exponent, we are working on that. We are crafting this. The point of this program is to have that number growing, almost like it's just right next to us, but it's getting larger by all the decisions that we're making, and the attention that we are pouring into positive things, and the lessons that we've gone over. This turns that number higher and higher, and the result realistically is unimaginable. The kind of results that you'll get in your life when we start growing exponentially. Now, these equations here, they may or not apply in your mind, but how about this? We're moving from the math to the Matthew principle. I mentioned the principle. This principle is not fair, wholeheartedly. This principle is not fair, and you might have heard it. I'm sure you have. It's the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's one way to express the Matthew principle. It's like the most crude and kind of the lowest hanging fruit as far as cliches go, and it's not about what we're about. We're not about that, although that the principle is realistic and it's everywhere. It's actually biblical. It's from the book of Matthew, and when you see it mathematically, it sheds light into when something starts to grow, it would rather grow in that direction. So positive growth grows into more positive growth. Wins beget wins. And how we are specifically applying it in this program, the Sober to Super program, is that iterations inspire growth, which adds to more growth. And that growth, when positively spun, when positively focused, turns into exponential positive growth. I'm going to say it again. The positive spin on the repetitions of iterations turns into positive growth, and positive growth begets positive growth, hence exponential growth realistically in our lives. I feel like I'm saying a lot of big words, or I'm kind of rambling a lot of big words, but this is all around us, and it can be our number one ally, as I had mentioned. And this is my intention, is that once you start growing and stacking wins and lessons on top of each other, what will end up happening for you is you will become unrecognizable. You will start to grow and win and learn, and you're going to be the recipient of so many opportunities. Once we get this thing going, it turns into this flywheel of success. And instead of being on the the shitty side of this principle, which is the poor get poorer, that's true. Uh, it tends to be true, but I am telling you from experience that you can flip this around. You can turn this thing around. You can get on the other end. You can be a part of the person that has and is rewarded because of having. And now it doesn't necessarily, I know that it seems like I'm referencing money and income. It works with that, but it also works with your health. Um, Here's a good one: a body in motion stays in motion. This gives us a hint into the same type of principle. So once you start, like, say you haven't done shit and you're sitting down on your ass and you're overweight and you haven't moved much, it's really hard to start moving. But once you start moving and you're in motion, a body in motion will stay in motion. Now, say that you're in motion and you undergo some kind of a circumstance where you're literally not able to move. You break your leg or your toe or something like that. That will carry you the other way. You sit down a little more than you had been because you're injured, and now you will start to you'll kind of start funneling into the lack of motion person, and then there'll be all kinds of health issues, or there'll be consequences to your lack of motion. So there's a curve up and a curve down. And what I'm inviting you to do with this appropriate relationship with failure is to get on the curve going up. That's what we're all about. And that's what we're doing. How about our trusty diagram of all of our glorious people here, out here, iterating on their life, making moves, gaining wins and lessons? Again, we want to be that person moving toward mastery. And at this point, I'd like to say something that it needs to be said. Failure is going to happen. There's no there's no way you get to mastery without enduring challenges. So I said it a couple of different ways. And if you haven't noticed by now, I prefer to lean towards the positive linguistic representation. However, if we take this same example that I had gone over earlier, about the door to door sales, I walked away from that. My initial goal was to make money. I didn't. So you can call that a failure. You can call that a loss. I prefer to look at it as a massive lesson. My point is that there's no way around it. It comes with the territory. To become a master, to become the ideal self, it comes with the territory. And when I say it, what do I mean? I mean the challenges of the failure, the losses. Like, when you commit action, there's a strong chance it may not go your way, right? But if we notice here, looking back to this diagram, it's that person that keeps moving at the bottom, that stacks the most iterations, that gets to the mastery in the ideal self. They get to their ideal vision and future self through moving along, committing action, knowing that failure, it's going to happen. If you do anything enough, it's going to happen. If you don't get those iterations and you're not realistic about, like, at some point you're going to endure a loss or a challenge, there will be something that will happen that will not go your way, a failure. If you're not willing to embrace that, then you're not going to get the iterations in, and you won't make it to mastery and an ideal version of yourself. If you can come to grips with that and still go at it, right? Still move forward, still commit yourself to action, knowing it could go one way or the other, right? You still move forward. And you get those iterations in. Here you are. You find yourself at the bottom of this particular depiction, right? Which is where we want to be. We want to be at the bottom of that person down there with more iterations than everybody else and closer to mastery than all the other people in this beautiful picture. I'm going to share something with you that really got on my nerves. Just like this picture is kind of nerve wracking. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. I watched this documentary, and this guy seemingly never failed at anything. It bothered me. Not that I want to see people fail, but if I'm watching something for entertainment, the hero of the story is the degree of a hero in conjunction with the tragedy that they're facing or the dragon that they're slaying. This is what I sign up for entertainment. And I watched this documentary, and I'm like, okay, I understand he's a success, no doubt. Uh, Pretty much anything he ever did, he was successful at. But when it came to the failure end of it, I got robbed. This guy, I think the darkest parts of the documentary, and they tried to really like pour it on when it happened. Like he lost his parents. We all lose our parents. To me, that's not a tragedy. It's just what is going to happen. It sucks and it's painful, but that doesn't make a hero for me. I was like, okay. And then the other part was like, you had an illegitimate child. Okay, that's just like a lapse of moral judgment, and you're a politician. So, what the hell are we doing here? My point is that the failures can, at this point in my life, like they're so valuable. My failure, my struggle, my battles, especially with sobriety, addiction, and then if you want to like use that as the umbrella and then have homelessness and all these other stuff like in that in my journey, like I cherish that. And so this particular documentary, it didn't give that to me. And I think that if you signed up for this program and you've been moving along here with me, you probably got some things that you can cherish as failures in your past too. And so what I'm getting to here is like embracing it, and then you're more likely to endure it in the future if you can look backwards and know that at once upon a time you had also struggled, and you embrace it in the current moment. And so success stories are cool, but the comeback stories are epic, right? And I have that line here because it's important to me. I carry this with me. It's like success stories are great, but comeback stories are epic. That's what we love as people, and you are my people. This is what we're talking about. And when it comes to embracing failure, it can be from your past, and then know that you'll also encounter it again in the future. But this time we'll have a different approach. We'll embrace it, and we'll continue to add to this journey that we've built thus far. Let's get back into momentum. We're going to shift gears back into the frame of mind, the mindset element. We were talking about actions and getting those iterations in, realistic bouts with winning and lessons, out there in the real world. And now we're going back into the internal and how we're framing these things. 3 benefits of the wins: we gain more momentum. It adds fuel to our fire. It builds self-efficacy, and it builds confidence. Super important. And it's a part of the journey that we love to experience. And there's very few things that feel as good as when you look up at the scoreboard and you came out like, you did it, you're like, man, I got a W. It feels fantastic intrinsically. The value is massive, and it adds to our ability to take the next iteration head on. And so there's so much value in just enjoying the win and letting it do what it does. Now, this is easier work than the lessons. There are 3 benefits though. And One benefit of a lesson or a loss is you got the knowledge that that didn't work. You know, like I learned door to door sales is not my path to my ideal vocation and career, and it's not where I want to be. So I at least, if you look at anything, I check that box off. Nope, that's not going to work. We can go ahead and just keep moving. Like now, a second benefit of these lessons and doing the work when things don't go our way is the resilience. You can build some tough skin by enduring the lessons, the losses. So sometimes the value from the lesson that you gain might even be better than the momentum and feeling from the win. It never feels like that. Let me just I'm gonna re-say this again. Like it never feels like that in the moment. Never. It always sucks. So hence the work. You got to do the work to extract, the value. And there is truth in what I said, that like sometimes the value from the extraction on a lesson can be better and greater than the momentum and the feeling from the win. The third benefit from our lessons or our losses is you can create a little cookie jar. I took this from David Goggins. If you're not familiar with him, he is he's got some really killer content about motivation out there. He talks about this cookie jar, and so the cookie jar analogy is just looking back into your past, and there's just like it's like jar mentally of memories. And so when you're going through something shitty in the moment, current moment, and you're thinking to yourself like, oh my gosh, like this sucks, man, those lessons, those losses from your past, you can just like think back. I think back all the time. If I'm doing something and I really don't like it, I'll think back to something that really sucked. Like the door to door thing doesn't compare at all to like cleaning up urine or, digging holes or, being homeless, things like that. It takes me like that cookie jar of mine, like is so filled with like memories, shitty memories, that I just like pull one out. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this ain't so bad. And so using it in the particular situation of our lessons and losses is that it fills that cookie jar up. And so you've got plenty of lessons and memories of when things didn't go your way to reference and give you momentum and fire and fuel for the current moment that you're in. Speaking of extraction, we're going to talk action. This is an exercise where we are going to switch, turn, transform a past failure into an opportunity or a lesson or whatever adds the most value in your reference to something in your past that didn't work out. And I want to note that it happens as soon as you can look fondly upon a past experience that didn't go well for you, or at least that was the objective view at the time. If instantaneously you turn it into something valuable when you can extract the lesson. And so if you notice when I'm talking about going door to door, like, or any of these horrible stories about how I've gotten paid in the past, like it doesn't, I don't look mad now, do I? Well, why is that, right? I have looked upon something that didn't work out for me in the past, and I have pulled the lessons, and now the memory is not horror and I can't believe that happened to me. It is like, oh wow, I learned something that day, didn't I? Like I learned not to open my mouth about that. It got me there. Whatever the lesson is, as soon as you extract that, as soon as you can switch and change a memory from a hardship to an opportunity that you had to grow and be better, like you instantaneously transform a loss into a lesson or a failure into an opportunity. And so we can do this instantaneously in our lives once we get good at transforming the past and seeing how we can flip the switch. When we work on this, And I want you to do this as many times as you can. And then in time, after doing this, you can you can do it in the moment. And so that's what we want to be. We want to be people of action in the current moment. And so, I think like the easiest way for me to explain this is like, if you've got to commute to work and it's 30 minutes each way, and you get this job and you're like, well, this is a decent job, but man, I gotta kind of drive like it's an hour every day. It could be worse. I mean, some people have really tough commutes, but say you're looking down the barrel of this and you're like, oh, I got to go sit in traffic. This is going to suck. Or you say, okay, I have this time. Maybe I can use it to learn some things. And then you get some kind of an audible learning method strategy, or hell, it could just be Audible, the product, and like just listen to books. You can start while you're driving, putting in useful information into your brain. And now you've turned what was a waste of your time and an inconvenience and a struggle into an opportunity to get better and learn, and grow. And so I want you to understand that this can be done with any and everything, um, even death. I when my grandmother had passed, I missed her and it tore me up. She had raised me. However, when she passed, I used it as an opportunity to be there for my family. She was gone. And a lot of my family looked at me like a liability, like, oh, he may start drinking, he might start doing drugs again. And I used it as an opportunity to be the shoulder to cry on. When people were falling apart, I managed to step up and be useful. And this was taking a really tough situation and turning it into an opportunity. And it doesn't make it less painful, but it does make it valuable, and it sucks a little less, right? And at least she would be happy with the way that I handled it. And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the challenge, the failure, the hardship, or whatever it is. It's that part is irrelevant. You can always extract a lesson and turn a failure into an opportunity. Let's revisit the phrase, the point, forego forego mediocrity by, sorry, I got a little choked up about the grandma thing. So forego mediocrity by embracing failure. This program is not about mediocrity. You're not about mediocrity. There, for some people that have hit rock bottom, gained traction in sobriety and recovery, they were spent so much time below mediocrity, or worse. It's like to be normal is like welcomed, and I get that. I understand that reaching a level of normalcy in society, community, and family is like, man, you finally made it. But that's not what you can be more. I know you can be more, and that's why we're here. This is the reason why you're listening to me, is because somewhere in your mind you understand that. So we are leaving mediocrity. We're going to ditch the pack. We're going to gain some ground, and we're going to continue this climb to an ideal version of yourself. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, up and to the right. You know what I mean?